Okay, so although it is in pieces right now, what you're looking at here is a Traxxas SRT. I had the opportunity to pick one of these up recently, um, and I figured I would because it would be a very nice match to the Traxxas TRX3 that I've raced at the Vintage Off-Road Nationals for the last 2 years. Um, so there's a lot that both chassis share in terms of like the platform style and design. So I figured it'd just be a really cool project to work on. So this one is in pretty rough shape. I don't know if it's because of the previous owner or if he got it from someone else, but I think it only had one previous owner, and they did some stuff to it. So the core of the chassis though is fine. Like the plates are in good condition, the plastics are in good condition. It's just kind of missing a few things. Like for example, the front tower isn't the original front tower. This I believe is a Rustler front tower. But then if you think about it, the SRT is basically the racing version of what eventually came to be the Rustler chassis. That means it should be relatively straightforward to find parts like suspension arms, shocks, those sorts of things. So I'm going to do kind of a similar build up to this as what I did with the TRX3 in terms of upgrades, most of which coming from Factory Works / A&L. So for example, front and rear towers here, because again, I can't use this front tower. That's not a SRT tower. And oh yeah, the rear tower that came with this thing isn't even a SRT rear tower. This looks very much like the Traxxas Rad 2 rear tower that I have on my Rad 2. This is slightly lower than the Rustler. So if I put these two sort of face to face, you see the shock mounting holes in this are a bit lower than the original SRT tower. And then the shocks that came with this thing, the front shocks were these plastic units that you get on modern Traxxas cars, and the rear shocks were low-C shocks. So this thing was all messed up. So I got to build it right. So I have Traxxas aluminum body shocks, although these are sort of the more modern aluminum shocks. The original vintage Traxxas shocks have a different color here for the shock body, and although the seal arrangement I believe is the same, but otherwise they should be about the same in terms of like how the seal is set up and everything. So I have a set of those. I actually pulled these off of the Rad 2. I believe they're the correct length, although we'll find out for sure once I start building it. So we got towers, of course, the A&L steering rack. I love these things. This steering rack is fine, but these plastics are old. I don't want to risk cracking it in the middle of a race. And we have the A&L power clutch here. Again, I have this also on the TRX3. Big reason to run this on vintage Traxxas chassis is this allows you to use Robinson-style spur gears instead of the Traxxas-style spur gears. The Traxxas spur gears have these little holes in them that you put these teeny tiny little sort of pencil eraser style slipper pads in there, which, the design is interesting because you can vary how much slipper area you have that's coupling the spur gear to the drivetrain. The problem is there aren't that many different options for different spur gear sizes. Otherwise, I'd have no problem with it. So that's why I got this. Also trying to assemble an MIP CVD setup from parts. There is, I think some guy has an SRT CVD, like full CVD set on eBay, but that's like over $100. You don't need to spend over $100. You can get all the pieces for less than that and put it all together. So I'm still waiting on some stuff to get shipped in for that. And to do that, you need these drive cups that attach to the diff out drive. There's two ways to do this. This here is the MIP unit, the original MIP unit that you would use for this. These were available, so I figured I'd pick them up. You can also use Kyosho, like vintage Kyosho gear diff out drives. They're very, very, very similar in size, and they just slot right on. I have those on my TRX3. I made a video about that some time ago. Those also work perfectly fine. So there's that. One thing with the power clutch that makes it kind of fun, I guess, to assemble for this gearbox is the top shaft. It's a different top shaft than the stock top shaft. The power clutch doesn't mount onto this sort of hex style end piece here to the top shaft. It uses sort of a more of like a pin, a drive pin type coupling. But to mount the top gear to the shaft, it doesn't just slide on and lock into this pin here. There are these serrations on the top shaft, and so you can't, I believe you can't use the metal gear on this. You have to use the nylon gears, and I have a couple of those, so that shouldn't be a problem. But I remember doing this exact thing for the TRX3 when I put the power clutch in there, and slotting that nylon gear over this is really hard because it really wants to grab, which is good because it holds it in place, but it's bad because it's hard to put together. And then if you wreck the gear and you got to take that gear off, it's also very difficult to disassemble. So that'll be fun. Got to rebuild the diff. I just took this apart, so this needs to be rebuilt. It's a little chunky. There was sand all over the outside of this and the inside a little bit of the gearbox. Thankfully, the gears themselves are still in very good condition, so that whatever sand was in here didn't muck up the gears, so that's a good thing. All I did to get the sand off is I started by brushing it, and then I just got a little like bin, and I filled it with water and simple green, and I just put these in there, stirred it up for a while, and just let it sit for a little while, and that was totally fine. The sand just came right off. As far as other parts, I'm waiting on a few things to come in. I want to put titanium turnbuckles on this, and the size that you would use for these is a little odd. So these turnbuckle links are 54 millimeters. So if you go and try to look up a 54 millimeter titanium turnbuckle, they don't exist. The only 54 millimeter turnbuckles you can get are these Traxxas units right here. So you have to get 55s. Okay, that's just an extra millimeter. That should be okay given how much thread slack you usually have when you put these things together. So about a half a millimeter per side longer should be totally fine. What else am I doing here? Waiting on some wheels to come in. The original wheels that go with these, the light dished wheels, the front wheels they don't make anymore. And I have a few pairs, so that should be enough to mount rib front tires if I want to race this on a loamy surface, and maybe some bar or slick front tires if I want to race this at Adrenaline, at Vonats. So those are incoming, because I ordered a few more sets of wheels. And then I just have to build this out, really. Interestingly, I just wanted to point this out. So on the Traxxas TRX3, the bulkhead is a bit narrower than this. Very similar geometry, but you basically have to cut out about this band of material from a modern Rustler or Slash bulkhead and sort of smush them together. Or if you have the original bulkhead, you can do that too. But on the SRT, it uses the same exact bulkhead that you would use on a modern Rustler or Bandit or whatever. And the front arms are also Bandit arms. These are Bandit arms. These are the arms that came with the truck. They're the exact same arms. It's kind of interesting because the Bandit's a buggy and the SRT is a stadium truck. So these arms are probably a bit shorter than what you would have on something like the RC10T or the T2 or the T3, and with a wider bulkhead. So I'm kind of interested to see how this truck will handle, whether it's better on bumpy surfaces and or smooth surfaces, how it compares. But I've heard good things about the SRT as a truck generally. Not quite as tunable as other trucks from the era, like the shock towers, for example, don't have quite as many holes. The camber link positions don't have quite as many, or at least up front. Although in the rear bulkhead has some positions on it. It's got basically 6 positions for the inner camber link, and it's a 3x2 matrix, so 3 rows, 2 columns. This part's very hard to find, but if you need to replace the bulkhead, say like you get in a big crash and you rip this thing out and it just blasts a big fat hole or a big fat chunk of plastic off, you can replace this with, I think, a Nitro Rustler rear bulkhead, which is the same shape. It'll bolt right in, I'm fairly certain, but instead of a 3x2, it's a 2x3, so you have 3 columns and 2 rows. I would like to assume that the inner foremost holes line up with these bottom foremost holes here, but we'll see. I ordered one of those just to compare. So that would be like a backup bulkhead in case this thing dies for some reason. Yeah, that's kind of it. So then the next question is, where am I going to race this? I've been getting a lot of stadium trucks lately for a variety of things, like Y2K stadium truck, which this would not qualify for. This is a 1993 chassis, and just stadium truck generally. I've made a point of wanting to do more low-C stuff next year for the RC10 Talk races and the Vintage Nationals. So my upfront plan has been to use my double XT at a variety of races next year. Where will this fit in? Assuming I can get it ready for next year. I don't know yet, but I do want to use it. So, maybe I run it for the Roostapalooza and Stadium Truck there. That'll be a very sort of loamy, bumpy surface. So I can set this up for that. And that would avoid me having to have two divergent setups with the Losi Double XT. So that's an option. The other option would be to bring this to Vonats with the TRX3 as a buggy stadium truck pair, because the TRX3 is very good there. And I'm pretty comfortable with that buggy. Maybe there's a few little tweaks I need to make to really dial it in, but it's very, very good. But then I want to run the Losi Double X there. So I'm not quite sure yet exactly how I'm going to sort out where this will fit in with my 2026 run plan. But I do want to run it. Yeah. So I guess that's it for now. Thanks for watching.